right, call this meeting of the IT Committee to order. We'll note that Amar and Alan both are unable to be with us tonight due to work commitments of different kinds. So it is just the three of us, and seeing as how we all remote, I suppose I should call the roll. Bob Hassinger.
I'm here.
Bob Carroll.
I am here.
And Dave Robbins is here. So we are all here. I think we're going to have a fairly quick agenda tonight. As usual, our first agenda item is public input. And rumor has it we may have some public input.
Yes, I have a member of the public here who wishes to address the committee.
It's really simple, and this is going to be really short. I am an election worker, and the Grafton elections go really pretty smoothly because for the regular elections, the pads plug into a station, so they're hooked up the entire time because they're on for hours and they're on all day. However, for the town meeting, it was just, we brought the iPads in and we were, to check people in. Unfortunately, they weren't all charged completely. So when we started checking people in, a couple of them died. They ran out of juice. Okay, and it wasn't a real problem because you didn't have to go by precinct for that. So I was one of the pads that went down, and we plugged it into the wall, and I didn't really think about it. About half an hour later, I went to see if I had any charge on that pad and could get back to checking people in, and I almost burned my hand on the charger because it was so hot. And I think that's a question of that particular size of plug didn't match the iPad as far as the juice that the iPad needed to get charged. And that's not an intuitive thing. And that's why I mentioned it to the IT committee, that you might want to mention, give people an idea of what kind of device charges into what type of charger. It's just a simple little thing, but if you put that device in the wall, obviously it wasn't very charged. I had, just a little bit of charge on it because it's not going to charge fast enough. And I don't expect somebody who's a treasurer or the town clerk or assistant town clerk or any of those people to understand, to know all of that. That's what I expect from the IT people, to have the technical background to put the right charger with the right device.
Yeah,
that's my whole thing.
That's it. Yeah, the iPads take a 10-watt charger, iPhones take a 5-watt charger, and depending on the model, depending on the newest iPads with USB-C, have a little different connector, different charger, but the older ones, yeah, the connectors look exactly the same, and you could plug either one into either one, but the iPads don't do well with a 5-watt charger.
And it's not going to charge as quickly.
Or at all.
But it's going to be like, I'm charging. Well, I think, and it was at that, it wasn't a problem, although that was a big meeting. So, we did have lines of people.
Yeah.
So are these on the Lightning, David, or are they USB-C?
USB.
Yeah.
These
No.
are probably the Lightning.
Well, most of them are. Most of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the newest iPads from the last 2 or 3 years, I think they switched over to USB-C, but all of the older iPads were on the Lightning connector, same as the iPhone.
Right.
That's why it can be confusing.
Right.
Yes, and they were the same as an iPhone. So
Yeah.
basically, you might want to just gently kind of keep an eye on what technologies people like the town clerk and
Right.
Right.
They come out of the end, right? You can swap the transformer that goes into the socket.
But you got to know about that.
Yeah, see, that's not intuitive to people. It looks like it fits,
Right.
so it must work.
Yeah, and
People of,
it's
you know,
particularly,
iPad versus phone, right?
it's particularly confusing with the older model chargers, because the 5-watt charger and the 10-watt charger looked identical. And
Yeah.
you can tell the difference only if you look at the faint gray lettering on the side of the charger.
Yeah,
Even the newer iPhone chargers are significantly smaller. You know, they're more like a little cube.
Yeah.
But the older ones, the iPhone and the iPad chargers, yeah, and they looked identical. And I probably still have some around, but
Right. Yeah, I was just looking at my daughter's, I met her at my daughter's desk, it's reverse.
yeah. It's just a question of sort of, there are probably few devices that even want the 5 anymore that the town has. And, you know, it's time maybe that they just sort of triage. So that doesn't happen again.
yeah, I think the lesson here is to make sure that the appropriate people are aware that they need to, and maybe even we need to stick labels on them, or you know,
I
somehow
think, yeah, exactly.
colored tape or something, so that picking the right charger for the iPad is a no-brainer, and anybody can look at it, say, yeah, yes, clearly that's the one.
Exactly, because when you're in the heat of trying to get people checked in and stuff, believe me,
Yeah.
it's not stuff you want to deal with. You know, that has to be done ahead of time, and that needs to be sort of a little bit sorted out and thought about.
Yeah, of course, you gotta start with people doing something about having, bringing charged equipment
Well, it should have been charged.
to
Yeah, that's a
the
different story.
meeting.
Yeah.
Actually, she's underselling what I saw when I got there. There was substantial backups.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there were substantial backups.
it
You were
was-
there early, so you didn't notice it, Dave, but
Yeah, you were
Yes.
probably mostly down in the hall.
yeah, but seriously, there were a lot of people that stood in line, and it was a lot of confusion because 2 stations were closed. You know, so because we
Yeah.
didn't have iPads, so you know, you don't really want to have people come in and be confused when they're checking in. And that really, and of course, the other things were we didn't have enough paddles and stuff like that. So when you add all these things in, it
Yeah.
doesn't make it run as smoothly as it should.
Yeah, so lesson number 1 is make sure they're fully charged before, ahead of time. Lesson number 2 is make sure you know, particularly when you might be out there for a long time, make sure you've got the correct charger.
Exactly. Okay, that's all I'm passing on.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, for the input.
All right. Is there, I have to ask this, is there any other public input? Seeing none, we have no attendees on Zoom. Don't see anybody in the background here in any of the pictures waving their hands. So we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the update from our town administrator, which there is basically, I spoke with Evan yesterday and asked him if he had anything for the committee, and he said, no, really, there's nothing's changed, nothing has happened of interest. I didn't outright ask, but I'm assuming that if they got the Office 365 situation resolved, Evan might have mentioned that and say, hey, finally we got off 365 going. So that's probably still in limbo. Nothing else. The only thing Evan did mention to me that he ought to be worth to pass on to the committees, he's talked a little bit about this before, but he may be getting closer to wanting to, to dive into policies. He had indicated that he was planning to review the existing IT related policies, and to the extent that they are on the select board's website already, we can look at them too. I said that we would probably be interested in looking at what they do have for policies and thinking about what policies they ought to have but do not now have. We've touched on at least a couple of topics in that neighborhood over the last several meetings, and so I think it's probably worth our while to come prepared at the next meeting to with some suggestions for policies that ought to be put in place that we currently aren't aware of, something like that.
So, I'm sorry, David, did you say they're already up on the website?
There are some policies on the select board's webpage. They have a page of policies.
All right.
I don't know how many of those are IT related. I do know that they made a fair amount of effort to, post their existing policies up there, but don't know if they're all there. Yes, on the select board page on the left-hand side, there's a policies and procedures link.
I see that.
I would assume that by now they do have good coverage on, new people coming in, getting a good understanding of policies and
I would think so.
security and all that, but
And they probably have an employee handbook,
yeah, but
which would include,
oh, sure, yeah, I read the book. Okay, yeah, move on.
Yeah, there's only one around.
yeah, I see a
Computer
computer information and resources. That may be the only one that they've got up there. There may be others that are hiding somewhere, that tucked away. But Evan indicated, did say he wanted to find, go through whatever policies they already have. He's sure that they're old, whatever they have is pretty old and is desperately in need of update. And then I had mentioned to him that we had in some of our discussions identified, additional policy areas that likely need to be addressed. Things like data retention and management.
Yeah, well, the one I just mentioned about just employees have to have an active understanding about security,
Yes.
all of that. And so it may be more than just a published. Did you, I kind of, it's been a long time, but like you had to do things, sign things and whatnot.
Yep.
Maybe even, I don't know, some sort of hands-on.
Yeah, I know it. Evan, I remember Evan mentioning to us on at least one occasion, maybe more than once, having some security awareness training that was conducted, possibly conducted by our IT contractor. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, there's topics that need to be covered one way or another.
Yeah, because that's great for the people who were there. If they covered this ground, but people keep coming and going.
Yep, that's something you have to do on a regular basis.
Just looking through this real quick, this is just one that's more specific about employees, acceptable use, and end users. There's nothing in here about, how the town manages their affairs, the CIO kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
No, that
definitely lacking, but they did at least sign it, signed by all the board of selectmen, so that's good. It's got a date, so 2021, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Signed is fine, but it's always bothered me when I looked into one of those. I found out that people don't know or have
Right.
not sufficiently made sensitive to.
Every employee should sign acceptance, they.
The part where there's a mention of termination.
There's no penalties there either. Yeah.
See, that might help get some attention from
Right.
individuals.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
screw this up, you're in trouble.
Right, I looked through it quick, Bob, but I didn't, because that was one of the things I looked for is, remediation or consequences. I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we as an IT committee are likely to have a lot of good recommendations for policies here. I think we've identified any number of gaps that need to be filled in, a number of things that need to be spelled out, practices that need to be, followed.
Yeah, we've just been doing ours at work for, the federal regulators, so I'm in the middle of it now.
Yep. Yeah, so, we can come prepared to the next meeting with our individual suggestions and thoughts. And I'm sure this is a topic that will go on for some time. Evan did also suggest that maybe our August meeting would be a good time for us to meet with Charlie and Company. We haven't met with them for quite a while to get an update on how our IT contractor is doing and what they're up to.
Yep.
So that will be on the agenda for the August meeting. And before you got on, Bob, Carol, I had mentioned to Bob Hassinger that it's a good thing I did not put committee reorganization on the agenda for tonight, although I theoretically should have. But it's getting to be that time of year, so we will do that in August, or we will punt it to September if we are unable to get everybody together for the August meeting. That's something I'd like to do with everybody who in the meeting. And we although theoretically we're supposed to do that as soon as possible after June 30th or July 1st, in practice we'll do it whenever it works for us.
Yeah, I just got an email as chair of the planning board telling me I had to get busy and submit the reorganization form. I sent off a bit of a message about that. But so someone is doing something,
Yep. Now, I got 3 of those, and that pretty much comes out every July. They go through and pump those emails out to every chair. So I'm chair of 3 different committees. I got 3 of those.
Yeah, well, I don't think I've ever gotten one. Because somehow it had been taken care of in our office, in the planning board office.
Yeah.
But apparently someone in wherever that comes from, the clerk's office, maybe,
Yeah, that was in the
someone there isn't alert enough to realize that's an elected board and it's already been reorganized.
that's probably true, because
A lack of thinking.
yep. Well, there have been staff changes, and Paul Cook is gone. I think Paul was the one who was taking care of it the last 2 or 3 years at least. Paul's gone. The ones I got today were from Nancy Billings, who is part-time helping out in the clerk's office. But they're short on staff right now, and with people doing this who haven't done it before, I'm not surprised that that you would have gotten something, even though it probably wasn't necessary.
Well, it said you got to do this,
Yeah.
and I don't like getting stuff that says I got to do something when I know better.
Yes, no, those for the planning board, that should have been put into the clerk's office right after we did our reorg.
And it was, according to Natalia.
Yep.
Anyway,
So you can probably safely ignore that one that you got.
well, there's been an exchange of messages.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, that's basically all I ever got from Evan. Was he wants to get to work on policies, and he was suggesting getting CMD to come and visit us in August. Other than that, the other agenda item was an update on the public Wi-Fi project that we discussed at the previous meeting. Asked Fiona if she had anything for us, and the only thing she wanted us to be aware of is that John Allen is going to be meeting with the cable committee on Monday the 17th to talk about the cable connections. Bob H, you'll be there to help guide that discussion.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the middle of that. There's a general point there, I think, about what might we, the town, whatever, want to do about thinking about in terms of providing public Wi-Fi at more places than we do now. For example, this is specifically about a couple of the parks, they were talking, it came to me in terms of the common and what's now called Whitney Park, up in North Grafton where the fire station is. But there's probably some other places too. And I'm not quite sure, it's come around about that. And I'm not quite sure whether somebody has said that's a bad idea, or maybe some other time, or we might have some outlook from our committee about, is that a good idea? How much of a problem would it present? Part of what I've been looking at is just, is there connectivity? How much, where would the money come from? What money and where would it come from? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so part of what, and then, Fiona and John, John was there too when I was talking to Fiona, so the three of us were talking. They're very definitely looking to us for guidance on, all the technical details, scheduling, equipment, and so on and so forth. So the kind of the first step is looking at, and we specifically we were talking about connectivity to the Common, to Mill Villages Park, and to Whitney Park. We already have connectivity at Mill Villages and the Common.
That's right. Well, yeah, we have wired connections. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question for those two places is, what do we need to do to connect up a public Wi-Fi access point? It would probably be running on one of these strands of fiber, just connecting straight through that fiber back to the municipal center, and sort of, keeping that traffic separate, keeping it on a separate network from everything else. But other than that, it's a straightforward network connection. We'd be looking at a one or more Wi-Fi access points. There would be questions about, clearly it's going to be an outdoors access point. It would have to be, protected against the weather, protected against vandalism. There would be a question of whether you need more than one access point to cover the area you want to cover. So you get into some of the details of the design, the Wi-Fi network design up at Whitney Park. We don't have any connectivity there yet, but there would be the question, which we talked about a little bit at the last meeting, whether we connect from Fire Station 2, where they have 12 fibers there, and I'm sure they're not using all of them, whether it's better to connect from Station 2 over to the park, or whether it would be better to make the connectivity at Whitney Park the same that we have at the Common and Mill Villages Park, so that it can serve other purposes, like connecting cable TV. So I think one of the things we did with Mill Villages in the Common was we set it up so you could do a live cable TV broadcast from the park.
Yeah, I think what we've been using at both the Common and if they've done live down at Mill Village is plug into an RJ, whatever that is.
RJ45.
Yeah.
So who pays?
I'm looking at, no one knew that the network existed, the F-Man network that I had so much to do with existed when Fiona started talking to me about it.
Yep.
But yeah, there's almost certainly going to be a bit of fiber run somewhere up at Whitney Park, either picking up from the fire station or else picking up from the appropriate point nearby on the trunk, the network trunk. And I don't know, some of the conversations been, it'd be better to do that. Have a separate connection. I don't know too much though about particularly outdoor access points. And hopefully it's not too big a security issue for our network people.
Yep, and that's, one of the reasons that I suggest running this public Wi-Fi on an entirely separate fiber is to make sure that there's no cross connection between networks, internal and external. I mean, we got we got 12 fibers. We've got a whole cable, a 12 fiber cable that terminates at a splice point on a pole somewhere near Whitney Park, at least according to the network diagram, Bob.
Yeah.
So it would be, it would be an expense to, connect into that and run the fiber over to Whitney Park, and how exactly we want to arrange the facilities at Whitney Park kind of depends on what we're going to do, what we're going to build at Whitney Park. And that's a project that's in the conceptual design stages at this point.
Yeah, well, looking at it, there's a row of telephone poles running down the fire station side of the park. So what we need to get to wherever we want to be is there. I don't know if we could hang access points on telephone poles, but there's talk of a little performance space at the back end, and in that case, we pretty much have the poles to get down there. It might be better to just do a whole 12 fibers like we have in each other destination. But all that's to be seen. That project is, well, Fiona's trying to make it happen. There's money there. Well, there's some money there.
Yeah,
And
no,
the money comes from where?
we have some ARPA money for that.
Yeah, and they have to spend it in a certain time frame, and
Right.
Because it
all
would be some engineering, and then, there's the network piece, then you need the power piece, right? The power, the access points and all that.
Yep.
So,
yeah, well, those poles have telephone and power on them that I'm talking about. So, it can be done, and I'm thinking of trying to lean, if necessary, trying to lean on cable to help pay for it if we come to that. But I'm maybe it's a little bigger thing than just Whitney Park. It can be a public access, public Wi-Fi program for. We can't go up to Airport Park. The network doesn't go up that way. But and I don't we must go to the library. So we'd be,
I'm sure we have one of those cables. I think there's two existing off of that branch heading. This I think there's one, if I remember right, what the picture looked like. There was one that went to the Nelson Library and one that went to the school.
the school.
North.
Yeah, but those are, there's something funny about that one. The library, because they had to cross the railroad, or there was an issue about crossing the railroad. So, but anyway,
Details.
I think we've outlined the. Do we think it'd be a good idea? We think it can be done, and are we gonna be saying we think it'd be a good thing for the town?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, kind of. I mean, from my point of view, having public Wi-Fi access at one of those parks really, it doesn't do anything for me. I get, but then I don't sit in the park for an afternoon on my laptop. Which if I did, I would be without the Wi-Fi, I would be connecting through my phone, which would work to a
probably
point.
5G, right?
But yeah, I think for the reason they thought about public Wi-Fi for the park was the idea that folks would like to, sit on the bench in the park and work on their laptop for a couple of hours, enjoy the fresh air and sunshine, and get some work done, or get some, it doesn't have to be work, but be able to use their laptops and, without having to rely on a cellular connection. So I can, although it wouldn't be much value to me personally, I can see where it would be valuable to, some members of the public. And that's basically why that was proposed originally as part of the LRRP.
Yeah, it seems to me that being able to say that Grafton provides that is a good thing.
Yeah.
There are businesses looking to walk in traffic around the common, the now what's it called, ice cream and coffee place at the corner of
Yeah, the Uncommon Cow.
yeah, that can't hurt them if the Wi-Fi reached to that point.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's any public Wi-Fi there. There's internet in that building, on the network, on the
Yeah, there's some businesses, maybe quite a few businesses that cater to the public, like a sit-down coffee place or restaurant. A lot of them do have their own Wi-Fi they make available to their customers, basically inside the shop.
Yeah, well, I kind of think that can be a good thing to do if we can. The thing in terms of money is that the cable fund is dedicated to cable purposes only, and since it's what paid for the FMAN network, you certainly could argue that this is an extension of the public purposes, and therefore might be easier to fund than some things.
Yeah, particularly if you think in terms of extending the FMAN to the Whitney Park, where for cable purposes, that then makes it feasible for cable to hook up to the network at Whitney Park, which they now cannot do. So you can probably justify that fairly easily as a cable expense.
Yeah, well, we'll talk to the cable committee, but
Yep.
When and if we get to that stage, we'll see. So I guess that's about all. Just think about what we might say if we were asked about whether it's a good idea.
Yep. And other than that, the other thing, like I said, Fiona and John would take any guidance we have as to how to carry this project through, what has to be done when, some idea of equipment requirements, other requirements. So I think I told them yesterday that basically the first step is to explore the connectivity at the parks with the cable committee, and then with a better idea of what connectivity is available, we then have a better handle on what we'll need to add for equipment.
Well,
There.
so since I did all that all that class of stuff in designing the network we've got now, if someone wanted, and we were actually seriously looking to spend money, I could go back through the same path that I used. The same people that built the network are still, I think they're still on contract, as they come and fix when the time comes.
Yep.
I think they helped work out with me about that before. We could try that. I think that's a little ways off from now, but
Yeah.
I could do that if it comes to it. And hopefully they have at least as good a idea of what's out there as I do, because they've had their fingers. I guess they're the ones. No one told me, but there have been a number of changes made in connections the cable studio was hooked up. Mill Villages Park was connected later, I think.
Yeah, right, on that 2012 network diagram you sent me, Bob, that,
Mhm.
yeah, Mill Villages Park was identified as a future connection.
Right. Right. So, there's been volatility.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess that's enough of that.
Yeah, so for now, the action goes to the cable committee next week. And we will follow up on that at our next meeting. And
See where we stand.
involving Fiona and John to the extent that they need to be or want to be, but yeah, they're really kind of looking to us for a lot of the technical guidance.
They have much larger fish in this project to fry.
Yep.
Saying how much money, which somehow the planning board is in the process of designing that park at the moment. Got to figure that one out a little bit, I think. But there's a lot. There'll be a lot to come for that over a period of time.
Yep. Yeah, we beat that one to death for tonight.
At least.
And our next agenda item, we don't have anything that requires an executive session, although we always drop that on the agenda just in case.
And there are no minutes.
And there are no minutes.
I move we adjourn.
What happened to Bob Carroll? He vanished.
Well,
So I will.
oh, wait a minute. We can't adjourn.
Well, we can say that the meeting has ended due to the
Loss of quorum.
loss of a quorum. So
Oh, no.
meeting adjourned due to loss of quorum.